How's it going, guys? It's Paul Myers, licensed professional counselor, owner and lead therapist of Intentional Counseling. We are a group practice in Frisco, Texas, and we specialize in mental health. And today I'm going to cover the last imprint from the book How We Love. It's one of the best marriage books I've read. It's written by two therapists with the last name Yurkovich. And what they do is they cover how your childhood impacts your marriage. And so we're going to cover the last imprint of that book. So there's 6 imprints, how your childhood affects you, and then how you bring that into your romantic relationships. And so the last style is called the controller, or the controlling style, right? We're going to cover the parenting environment that created the style, the symptoms of the imprint, and then the cure and the resolution, how to heal from that to have healthy relationships and have better marriage. So we have number 1 is the parenting environment. So the parenting environment, if you watch the video that I did on the victim imprint, the parenting environment is exactly the same. So they call it chaotic, which is just a more diplomatic way to say that it's abusive or neglectful, very unstable, very unhealthy, very dysfunctional. Specifically, abuse, neglect, substance abuse problems. You know, if you had a parent that's an alcoholic, or they had some form of addiction to drugs or whatever their addictions were. There's typically frequent conflict and anger outbursts in the home growing up, so it's very unsafe, very high conflict oriented. There's sometimes domestic violence, or your parents are abusive towards each other, and that pretty much sums up that environment. So it's unstable, chaotic, broken, unsafe, abuse and neglect. Sometimes there's a revolving door if there's multiple divorces, or you have multiple divorces and abusive step-parents and things of that matter, for example. So lots of chaos there. What it does, it does a ton of damage. The victim takes this, internalizes it, blames themselves, and they take this internal passive approach to relationships. The controller takes it the exact opposite way, where they externalize that, and they build an aura of anger and self-preservation to cope. And they become abusive themselves in order to survive and not be hurt. And so the controller, typically their philosophy, and this is fundamental, they don't actively think this. These are very subconscious philosophies and fundamental views on what love is and is not. And so these are not active conscious thoughts a lot of the time. It's more of a baseline emotional understanding. And so the philosophy is love equals conflict and war. So the controller, they only see winning and losing. They don't see compromise. They don't see respect. They don't even know what love is. They have no concept of it. So it's either kill or be killed. The best defense is offense, is kind of one of the ways of looking at a relationship. So they tend to hurt the other person because they assume that the other person is going to hurt them. And so if they hurt them first, then it's safer for me, right? They try to maintain control to feel safer and reduce their own fears. It's all self-preservation based. Controllers have a large degree of anger. There are lots of anger problems. Anger is the key component, a key emotion to the controlling style. That's their primary emotion. They tend to be abusive towards their spouse. They tend to struggle with anger towards their own children, right? And they really replicate their environment growing up, because that's what they know, right? It's very common. They do have controlling tendencies. Control is limiting someone else's ability to choose, and stripping someone else of the choices and of their freedoms and of their liberty to make choices. I see a lot of people, they get married and they think that their spouse is controlling them, when it's really just the accountability that marriage is bringing. That is not control. Being accountable to someone in marriage is not control. Control is when people strip you of your ability to choose. For example, hey, I don't trust you to drive a car, so I went ahead and took your car keys and I hid your car keys. That is controlling. Or hey, I logged into your social media accounts. I didn't like what I saw, so I went ahead and deleted them and deactivated them. So that's controlling. I threw away your stuff that I didn't like. That's controlling behavior, where you really strip somebody of their ability to make decisions and make choices. The accountability that marriage brings is healthy and normal, and that is not control. So try not to mix those two up. I see that a lot in a lot of marriage counseling that I do. People confuse what is and is not control. So the controller takes away other people's choices on purpose so that they have more power. You don't have access to the bank account. I went in, I changed the password. You don't have access to it. I'm the only one with access to the bank account. I'm the only one with the password, not you. I did that on purpose for control. That's a good example, okay? Those are dramatic examples I'm using, but I like to be dramatic to prove my points. So, we have the last one. Controllers create conflict to feel loved. If there's no conflict, they don't feel loved. So they create conflict because that's what they know and that's what they think love is. So if they're not fighting and there's no conflict, there's no war, well then my spouse must not care, right? And so they create that conflict because that's what makes them feel valued and loved. So it's a very warped ideology. This is actually this is the most destructive style out of all the imprints. This is the most damaging, the most destructive. Most controllers do not go to therapy because they have a very hard time admitting that they have a problem and taking responsibility for themselves. They tend to blame others a lot and make excuses and live in denial about their own flaws, right? And they're very, very, very low functioning in relationships. And so typically I'd recommend controllers don't be in relationships romantically until after they've done extensive amounts of individual therapy. And which is one of the resolutions. Professional help. Professional help is great for anybody. If you haven't done counseling, always recommend it. I've done it in my life. It's super helpful. It's just a safe place to grow and be better and be honest and open and work through your stuff. It's a healthy thing. It shows that you're being mature and taking responsibility for yourself. Professional help, 1 to 3 years is about the average of what we'll need to undo the controlling style, just because it's so potent. It's extensive professional help, usually around 1.5 years. You'll have a really big breakthrough. And in those breakthroughs, typically underneath all that anger, if we're peeling the onion layer back, we have a lot of sadness, a lot of hurt, a lot of pain, a lot of childhood injuries. And they need to really grieve that and get to that core emotion of sadness and pain and loss, and to grieve those losses in a safe setting. That is super healing for these people. That's one of the only things that really reduces that anger, is really dealing with the core emotion underneath the anger, which is sadness and pain and hurt, rejection. Being vulnerable with fears and hurts is a great way to heal from the past and deepen your relationships and the connection in your relationships. That vulnerability piece is so crucial. Controllers have zero vulnerability whatsoever. It's all anger, it's all self-preservation, no vulnerability. So if you can tear your wall down and share the deeper, more vulnerable feelings underneath your walls, you'll find that most people are not going to treat you the way you're used to being treated, like childhood. And actually, most people care and respond normally when you're struggling. Allow sadness to flow freely. Controllers have a hard time allowing those emotions to come. They tend to stuff their emotions and suppress them and deny them away. No, we don't want to do that. We just want to allow feelings. Feelings are normal. Everybody has them. Difference is what you do with it. So allow those feelings to flow. You'll get more comfortable with it. The last part is forgiveness towards self and forgiveness towards others. You'll have to forgive your parents Very hard to do, but you're going to have to forgive your parents for their flaws, mistakes, and how they've impacted you negatively. Work through your childhood traumas and difficulties in a professional setting. Really do the work. You'll really love changing. Forgive yourself. Cut yourself some slack. No one's perfect. And definitely forgive others. God forgives us, so who are we not to forgive? And honestly, it's healing across the board for everybody involved. All right? That is it. That's the controller style. If you relate to this, don't worry. I've seen a lot of people recover from a lot of things. You can always grow and be better. So if you haven't ever gotten help, it's never too late. So better late than never, basically. So hey, if you have any comments, concerns, questions, leave those below. We'd be happy to hear from you. As always, subscribe. That helps us grow and impact more people. And go to intentional-counseling.com if you haven't done therapy. Either myself or one of our trained licensed counselors can help you in person or through telehealth even. So, all right, guys. Hey, appreciate you stopping by. We'll see you next time. Take care.